Good morning, Smarter News. Hope you're enjoying a long weekend, perhaps celebrating a President's Day weekend, although it is officially a celebration for George Washington's birthday. At least that's the federal holiday. There's so much happening in the world today. I just wanted to jump on real quick for a live. We typically don't do this, but I felt like I needed a cup of coffee with friends. And you're seeing a lot of headlines really circulating, and I expect you to continue to see that over the next 24 hours, over the next week. And we've certainly seen that in the past few weeks. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and kind of give us a big overview. It's interesting how you can tie the news together. Today, George Washington's birthday, a federal holiday that's one of our first federal holidays in American history. Over the years, it's become President's Day, and perhaps in your state, it could be President's Day. But the federal holiday, the official federal holiday, is George Washington's birthday. He's one of two Americans. The birthdays are federal holidays. That also includes Martin Luther King Jr. So depending on your state, it could be President's Day. And of course, we commonly refer to it as President's Day. You see all those sales, right, that you can shop at. Federal holidays are placed on a Monday on purpose because the federal government thought that would be a way to promote economic activity. So that's why you tend to see it that way, with very, very few exceptions. One of my favorite stories about President Washington that I didn't know anything about as we were preparing past reports for President's Day and learning that it's actually George Washington's birthday, because I certainly didn't know that. Did you know he actually shopped for Martha Washington? There is records of him sending off for designer shoes in Europe for his wife. I just want to point that out. That might be something to share with a spouse, perhaps, or use for motivation. If you're wondering, like, do I buy the shoes? Like, maybe you buy the shoes for George Washington's birthday because that's what he did for his wife. I don't know about you guys, but I return a lot of things these days. So that must be really difficult if a shoe didn't fit and it was coming from Europe. Not the easiest thing to do. Special request, designer requested from President Washington. So he was a man of many talents. One of the things that's done in the Senate every year for his birthday, it's a tradition that really dates back to the mid 1800s, but in the Senate specifically from the late 1800s, is senators read his farewell address. And this was an address he put together when he decided he's not going to run for another term in office, that it was his time to leave public service. And it's read every year. One year it'll be a Democrat, the next year it'll be a Republican. And I was reading it this morning, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to jump on and talk to you, because there's always something in that farewell address. There's always something that's pertinent to the news cycle and the current struggles of the American people. Last year, what really resonated was political parties, how George Washington really felt skeptical about political parties. He also warned about geographic or regional divides in America. How has that risen to the surface over the last several years with different pandemic policies, reminding the American people, you actually share struggles. You share more than you think. Don't let these regional divides get to you. Don't let these political parties get to you. One of the things he also talked about was foreign policy. And he was very, very wary of America becoming entangled in alliances, unless it was for an emergency situation. And that's where he felt it was important. But in general, he felt America getting entangled with overseas, specifically in Europe at that time, was a bad idea. And so let's take that news to what's happening in Ukraine and Russia now. Because as I was thinking about it this weekend, I was struggling. As a journalist, it's my job to constantly keep you abreast of news. What is news? It's new information. And over the last several weeks, we have followed the White House as they have made announcements of an imminent invasion from Russia into Ukraine. But there was a point last week when the messaging was consistently the same that I thought to myself, is this news? Am I actually sharing something of value with our audience, or am I continuing to scare people unnecessarily because we don't actually know what's going to happen? I'm always grateful for a White House that will over communicate. We want access to our leaders. We want to understand what they're saying. It's important to cover the president and cabinet members, all of that. So please don't get me wrong. But as we're getting the same messaging, I want to make sure I'm making good editorial judgment. So that came into play. And I really thought this weekend, what is the point? Why does this story really matter? Where are we losing track of this story and why it actually matters? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today. So 2 reasons. One of the things we don't say out loud enough to each other is we don't want any pain and suffering for anyone. We don't want anyone to experience pain or suffering or war. I'm sure there's a mother in Ukraine right now worried about her children, wondering about an invasion, hearing U.S. officials, including on the air on television today in America, talking about a violent invasion. And just from a human level, that matters. We don't want anyone to confront death or anything like that, the violence that's being described. So the humanity is the part of the story that we can't lose. We can't lose in the diplomacy that we're going to continue to follow. So that's something we have to pay attention to. But here's sort of the broader picture when we get to foreign policy. The NATO alliance that we've talked so much about, the largest peacetime alliance that's ever been put together, is an alliance that dates back several decades, but it hasn't always been around. We tend to think these things have always been around. Well, it wasn't around before World War II. World War II was destructive and deadly and terrible. And NATO came together as a way to say, these are the countries that have a united front against potential enemies that don't share our values. And so what we're really watching is not a test of necessarily just Russia and whether or not they're going to invade Ukraine. It's a test about what the alliance actually looks like right now and what the alliance is willing to stand up for. It's not just about Russia coming across Ukraine's border. It's a question about, well, what in a few years Russia comes across Ukraine's border and then decides to go into Romania or Poland, maybe just a little bit, just to contested areas. What happens next? What does that actually look like? What is the alliance willing to do? In the past, in my reporting, it's been said, and you'll find a lot of different ways that this is reported, that one of the things that Vladimir Putin really is a goal of his, and this is again hypothetical, not necessarily hypothetical, but this is the read of foreign policy analysts, is the destruction of NATO, of a not united Europe, because that would be better for him. Right? That he wants to expand Russia and Russia's power in the world. And one of the ways he can do that is by weakening the alliance, showing cracks in the alliance. Now, whether or not the alliance is a good idea or, something that should be lasting, or whether or not the members all should be members, that's a broader question. But I don't want us to lose sight of this historic alliance and the challenge that it is confronting right now. It's not just about the U.S. and Russia. These are just the power players. It's also about what is this alliance willing to do? What are the stakes for this alliance? How is this alliance going to confront this? And not just about Ukraine, but a broader picture of potential movement. So I think that's important for us to kind of take a deep breath, no matter what headlines come at you. That's going to be really important. Some of you have asked, well, there's a lot of big domestic policy, big domestic stories that we're sort of ignoring for this. And I think that's a fair criticism. There are a lot of really big domestic stories. Late on the day on Friday, we got the new border numbers. Once a month, we get border numbers. That will give us an idea about what's happening at the U.S. southern border. You're going to see a report on that later in the day. We always do a report on these border numbers. And just a, kind of a broad strokes overview of that is that the number of people attempting to cross the U.S. border declined compared to previous months, but is still very much a historic high. Why does the border story matter? Independent of politics. The way a nation defines itself is through its people and through its borders. Sovereignty of a nation is what we're talking about when we're talking about Ukraine. A violation of their borders is what we're watching for. That's international news. This is part of the reason why this is a big domestic story as well. It often gets hijacked based on politics, but I don't want you to lose sight of that. So that's something you're going to be seeing a lot more of. So just a quick overview for you today. As we enter into this news week, we'll be with you every step of the way. I look forward to covering these stories. I'm curious about your questions and comments and how we can fill in the gaps, because there are gaps. How can we do that? How can we better serve you so that you have the information you need as this news is coming at you? Please let me know and enjoy today. If you'd like to read a little bit of the farewell address by George Washington in honor of his birthday, that tradition started to honor his 130th anniversary of his birthday. And actually it was done by both houses of Congress. So if you'd like to do that, it's linked on our website. It's very easy to get to. You can tap the link in our bio on social media, or you can link in our captions and it'll bring you right there. And even if you just close your eyes and point to a line and just read that paragraph, I think it'll be cool. So happy birthday, George Washington. Happy President's Day. Enjoy your Monday. And we'll always be here with more quick, concise, nonpartisan information for you at smartnews.com. Have a great day. Bye, guys.